Hey, what's going on, Soulmates? Soulkeeper Comics Media and Memorabilia here, and I want to hit you guys up with some thoughts about the new Marvel Legends Iron Spider reveal. And I'm a little bit on the fence about this figure. I think at first glance, it's a pretty decent action figure, and I do notice that they got the details right on this one. Specifically that the Iron Spider, as worn by Peter Parker, only had 3 legs on his back. I had to look at this figure for a moment and study it and make sure that there were in fact only 3 mechanical legs on his back, because it's one of those things that's easy to screw up. Because there are 2 versions of the costume. There's the version as worn by Peter Parker that only had 3 legs, and then there's another version worn by the Scarlet Spiders that had 4 legs. So, depending on how many legs you have on the costume, you either have one character or you have the other. And fortunately, we do have Peter Parker here. This is Peter Parker's costume, and believe me, I breathe a sigh of relief to see that. I hate to be like that, Soulmates, but you know, Hasbro screwed up the web shooters on Venom from Spider-Man the Animated Series on the Retro card, and then on Wolverine from X-Men the Animated Series, on one set of his hands they just left off the bulbs that his claws come out of. So it wouldn't be any great surprise to me here to see an extra leg on Spider-Man. Now, FYI, Soulmates, we are looking at a digital render of Iron Spider here, not a prototype. And believe me, I really don't like talking and making decisions about digital renders. I want to see a prototype before I make any kind of big decisions, and based on the fact that this is a digital render, I recommend that when it comes up for pre-order, unless it has pictures of the prototype up there, don't pre-order it. Wait for actual pictures of the item before you put your money toward it. Now, more than likely, this is what Iron Spider is going to look like, because Hasbro is generally pretty good about following through on the designs they put out there. So now let's talk about some things I like about this figure. This appears to be an all-new sculpt. When you look at the figure, it is all pinless. This is a new body for Spider-Man, and I think that it looks pretty good at first glance. It is difficult for me to tell whether his spider decal is painted on or sculpted on, but looking at his lat on one of these pictures, it does look like there's a little rim of light. I can see another rim of light on the decal just under his arm, and then I can see another rim of light on his chest away from our view. So this does give me some hope that this is sculpted on, and if it is sculpted on, then I think this is an absolute slam dunk figure. You can get away with painting on Spider-Man's webs on his regular costume, because that's a pretty involved design, right? It would be very difficult to raise up the plastic on that to make webbing on his costume, and in fact it probably looks better on Spider-Man's costume when it is just painted on, because you think about it, Peter's probably sewn his webs directly onto the costume, so they're probably going to look pretty flat, and a paint job would look right with that kind of design. On an iron-based costume, though, that Iron Man made for Spider-Man, I think that those need to be raised up. In my mind, if the spider decal is sculpted on, this is a total S-tier figure then, and if you're a Spider-Man fan, it's a must-have. An interesting note is that there have been a couple of different versions of the gauntlets on Iron Spider's forearms and wrists depicted, so Hasbro has gone with one of them. I mean, they have to choose one, right? But there's also been one that's been depicted as only a half of a gauntlet that's only covering his wrist and his forearm. So this is still accurate. If you support what I do, please click subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss a single video of mine when it comes out. And if you want to hang out with me and my soulmates, I stream live on Twitch Monday through Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I have to believe that Hasbro used the gauntlets that they did so they wouldn't have to make new hands for Spider-Man here, because if they used the other gauntlets, they would have to sculpt the gauntlet detail on top of Spider-Man's hand, and well, it's easier just to reuse the same hands that they've used time and again with Spider-Man so far. His punching hands so he can knock out the bad guys, and his web spinning hands so he can whip those webs all over New York City. For all you guys wondering what the Iron Spider costume is, just in case you're not aware, it's a costume that Spider-Man got during the Civil War storyline, and it was created by Tony Stark, of course, hence the name Iron Spider, because Spider-Man doesn't have the resources to make a suit of iron like this. And believe it or not, this was actually Spider-Man's official costume for a while, until he reverted back to his original because the writer wanted him to. I mean, you can't argue with a classic, right? But still, I like this costume. I like the way that Spider-Man looks in it, even though it's not really the most appropriate for Spider-Man, because anyone who knows Spider-Man knows that he is the unluckiest superhero in the entire universe. The man can never get a win. He's always getting his L's just as he's getting his wins, and that's part of the charm of the character, that he's just having a rough life like the rest of us and doesn't have all the resources in the world to do whatever he wants. I really hope that Hasbro uses the metallic plastic on the gold parts on Iron Spider here, and not metallic paint, because metallic paint, for all you guys who don't know, really does not stand the test of time. I have figures with metallic paint on them, and it flakes off over time, much easier than it ever would for metallic plastic, so I'm all in for metallic plastic. I am fine with it. I was a little skeptical at first until I saw my Ultimate Iron Man just flaking off on his reds. Oh boy, I might think about getting this one, even though I'm not like the biggest fan of the Iron Spider or the biggest fan of the Civil War storyline. Although, admittedly, I am a bit of a Daredevil nut, and I would love to see more Daredevil merch, but that's another story for another time, of course. One thing that does surprise me is that they're going with the waist articulation instead of the chest swivel like they have been on some Spider-Man figures recently. But the reason I think they're doing that is because of the mechanical legs on Iron Spider's back here. So it's probably the better choice, although I would be curious to know if that's why they're not using the chest articulation, because I played around with it on my movie Venom figure, and I thought that that articulation was way better than it had any right to be. I thought it was going to be really lame, but then I actually used it, and I was pleasantly surprised. He had so much mobility, and it looked very natural when he turned up there. I was just taken aback by it. Well, Soulmates, what do you think of this Iron Spider figure? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you on the fence about it? Are you definitely going to get this one? Or are you not really that big of a Spider-Man fan or a Civil War fan? I don't know, guys. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. If you support what I do, please click subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss a single video of mine when it comes out. And if you want to hang out with me and my soulmates, I stream live on Twitch Monday through Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be back again soon with some more thoughts about new comic book toy releases, and until then, with love from me to you, bye-bye.